Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 17th of August. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. A border police officer was lightly wounded this afternoon after he was stabbed by a Palestinian near the Tapuach Junction in the West Bank. Another soldier shot and killed the assailant who, according to an initial investigation, approached the troops telling them that he wasn't feeling well and asking for water. After the soldiers indicated that he could come closer, he then pulled out his knife and began to attack them. Today's incident is the latest in a series against Israeli soldiers and civilians in the West Bank, and the third stabbing in the past 48 hours alone, one of which took place at the same location as today's incident. On Saturday evening, one border police guard was lightly wounded after being stabbed in the back near the Tapuach Junction, and just hours before, another soldier was also lightly hurt when he was stabbed near the Ofer prison checkpoint along Highway 443 by another Palestinian asking for water. Troops opened fire at both Palestinian assailants, one of whom died. In other news, Islamic State forces in Syria do not have the military capability to seriously threaten Israel. That's according to a senior officer in the IDF Northern Command, who went on to say, however, that the real danger comes from groups supported and equipped by Iran, such as Hezbollah. We get more in this report from IBA's Dennis Zinn.
Military reporters were invited to witness the final hours of a large-scale IDF exercise on the northern border, which took place over the last 2 weeks. The drill included the blocking of a simultaneous multi-pronged infiltration attempt, the protection of civilian communities and evacuation of others, and simulated offensive operations inside Syria and Lebanon. Forces from the infantry, air force and navy took part in the maneuvers and also included reserve units. A senior officer in the Northern Command said that the relative quiet on the Israeli side of the northern border may be shattered at any moment by one of the groups battling for dominance in Syria. And he said that while ISIS could ultimately gain the upper hand on the Syrian side of the Golan Heights, it does not have the wherewithal to seriously worry the IDF. The real threat, he said, is from Hezbollah and other factions supported by Iran. To prove his point, the officer revealed footage of the Air Force strike on the border with Syria, reported some 2 months ago, which killed 4 terrorists which tried to plant large explosives along the dividing fence. IDF spotters noticed the cell and sounded the alert. The terrorists were residents of the Syrian village of Khadr. Some had relatives in Israel. A mourning tent was erected in the town of Majd al-Shams, emphasizing the complexity of the situation. A closer investigation revealed that the high explosive charges that the terrorists were carrying were made in Iran. Meanwhile, the carnage in Syria itself continues. Yesterday, Syrian warplanes rocketed the open-air market in the town of Douma near Damascus, killing 100 civilians and wounding some 300. Eyewitnesses said that the ordnance was of a type that had not been used in the past. City officials called it an unwarranted massacre, but for the IDF troops who were packing their gear after the intensive exercise on the northern border, the bombing highlighted exactly why they were there. Dennis Zinn, IBA News.
An end to the crisis with Turkey over the Mavi Marmara affair is reportedly being worked out by Hamas following the visit of the group's Politburo head, Khalid Mashal, to Ankara. IBA's Ari O'Sullivan has the story.
The Hamas media have been rife with reports that a comprehensive deal is about to be reached to lift the 8-year-old blockade of the Gaza Strip as part of a long-term ceasefire. According to the Hamas daily, Ali Rassela, a senior advisor to the Turkish Prime Minister, has said that the resolution of the crisis between Israel and Turkey, which have had strained relations since the Mavi Marmara flotilla incident in 2010, is very close. He said that negotiations with Jerusalem over compensation for the Navy raid on the blockade-breaking ship in which 10 Turkish nationals were killed was likely to be resolved very soon. Israeli officials have confirmed this. They say much work has been done and there's a great deal of progress. Hamas's political leader, Khalid Mashal, was in Turkey last week, and interestingly enough, the main topic in the conversation between Mashal and the Turkish Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu in Ankara was the negotiations on the Mavi Marmara incident. Why? Because Hamas believes that bringing the issue to a close will change the approach Israel has to the Gaza Strip. Hamas is expecting that once the negotiations with Turkey are resolved, there will be easing of restrictions on the Gaza Strip, and the deal is being mediated by former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. But Israeli officials have dismissed the claims being made by Hamas that they would agree to a long-term hudna, or ceasefire, lasting 8 to 10 years in return for lifting of the blockade, saying that this isn't in the cards right now. According to Hamas, the Turks discussed the possibility of building a port in the Gaza Strip with the examination of its cargo being done in northern Cyprus. Meanwhile, a top Hamas delegation is off to Egypt this evening to try and improve relations with the al-Sisi regime. Cairo still sees Hamas as a terrorist organization, but is under pressure from the Saudis to restore relations with Hamas as part of the effort to return the Palestinians to the Sunni fold after being supported by the Shiite Iran for years.
The state attorney's office today announced that it is willing to consider the release of hunger-striking Palestinian security prisoner Mohammed Alan from administrative detention if he agrees to leave the country for a period of 4 years. Violent confrontations broke out last evening, both at the northern entrance to Ashkelon and the Barzilai Medical Center where Alan is being treated. We get more from IBA's Eli Wogelanter.
The Supreme Court held a hearing this afternoon on a petition to release Palestinian hunger striker Mohammed Alan on medical grounds. The administrative detainee lost consciousness after 60 days on a hunger strike. The state attorney's office submitted a written response to the High Court of Justice, announcing that if Alan would consider leaving Israel for a period of 4 years, the government would agree to his release from administrative detention. According to Palestinian officials, a similar offer was made to Alan during an earlier stage of his hunger strike, and he rejected it. Hundreds of protesters clashed last night at the northern entrance to Ashkelon and outside Barzilai Hospital in Ashkelon, where Alan is being treated. Police blocked off the main Ashkelon junction and diverted traffic to the coastal city's southern entrance. 13 Jewish and Arab protesters were arrested during the rioting, with 2 requiring medical attention. Police stopped 4 busloads of Arab protesters from approaching the hospital, and dozens of Arabs who got off the bus clashed with police, who responded with tear gas and pepper spray. Police said the Arab protesters threw stones and also used pepper spray against police. Barzilai said earlier that it was trying to bring Alan out of a medically induced coma ahead of the High Court hearing. Administrators at the Ashkelon hospital said that doctors had been gradually decreasing the dosage of the drugs that have been keeping him sedated since last night in a bid to draw Alan out of his unconscious state. If and when he regains consciousness, and if he continues to refuse to eat, the government must decide whether it will invoke a law passed last month allowing the force feeding of prisoners when their lives are in danger. Public Security Minister Gilad Erdan said that if Israel were to release Alan because of his poor health, this would lead to a mass hunger strike among security prisoners and a new weapon for terrorists. He called the petition to release Alan a strange petition that seeks to free him because of his medical condition when he himself caused that medical condition. Eli Wogelanter, IBA News.
Head of the Megillot Regional Council, Mordechai Dachman, today announced that he will step down from his position in the wake of allegations that he is connected to the corruption scandal involving senior officials of the Israel Beitenu party. Dachman is suspected of repeatedly bribing former Deputy Interior Minister Fahina Kirshenbaum, who also served as the Secretary General of Israel Beitenu, in exchange for larger budgets. He's the second council head to resign due to the case, following in the footsteps of Gershom Masika, who headed the Samaria Regional Council. In a letter to his residents, Dachman wrote that even though he may have made some mistakes along the way, anything that he did was in the interest of the community and never for the sake of his own personal gain. Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif and his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov said after talks in Moscow that their two countries have a united position on Syria, with both diplomats warning against any outside attempts to dictate a resolution to the civil war that is raging in the Arab Republic. The reaching of a nuclear deal between Iran and the world powers last month has led to a series of diplomatic moves aimed at achieving some sort of a breakthrough with Syria. Lavrov met with members of the Syrian opposition last week while Zarif was in Damascus to discuss ways of ending the war with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Moscow and Tehran have both supported Damascus in a conflict which has left more than 250,000 people dead since it began in 2011. The signing of the nuclear deal raised Moscow's expectations of expanding trade with the Islamic Republic, including in the nuclear energy and the defense sectors. And Zarif and Lavrov announced that they've also discussed the construction of new nuclear reactors and other projects in Iran. Here at home, the police committee investigating last month's fatal stabbing attack at the Gay Pride Parade in the Capitol will submit its final conclusions in the coming days after Public Security Minister Gilad Erdan partially rejected results that the panel submitted to him yesterday. Erdan ordered a revision of the recommendations and demanded that he be sent the amended report within 2 days. The initial version called for the penalization of senior officers, including the outright firing of at least 3 for failing to prevent the attack that killed 16-year-old Shira Banki and left 5 others injured. The officers had received specific advance warnings about 6 individuals, including the assailant, Yishai Schliessel, who were suspected of planning attacks of violence against the parade participants. No special measures were put in place to monitor Schliessel, who carried out the attack just 3 weeks after he was released from prison for serving a 10-year sentence for perpetrating a similar crime in 2005. President Reuven Rivlin and Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barkat presided over the start of the academic year that's observed by the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community at a school in the Har Nof neighborhood. The religious community begins class on the first day of the month of Elul on the Hebrew calendar, while public school opens on the 1st of September. The president told the young students that education is a critical factor in enabling citizens to contribute to the society in which they live. His slated visit to the Talmud Torah Kehilat Yaakov school in the remote neighborhood was canceled when the ultra-Orthodox administration withdrew their invitation last week after the president demonstrated strong support of the gay and lesbian community in the wake of the violence at Jerusalem's Gay Pride Parade. According to his office, numerous Haredi organizations and institutions then reached out to tell the president that he was welcome to come whenever he would like, even though they made it clear that they do not condone homosexuality. Elul also brings the start of the special Shlichot prayers for the Sephardic Jewish community, which began observance before dawn yesterday, while Ashkenazi Jews will begin resuscitation the last Saturday night before the Rosh Hashanah holiday. Both sectors continue until Yom Kippur. The stirring penitential prayers and the daily blowing of the shofar ram's horn announce the approach of the days of awe. The period of Shlichot coincides with the 40 days that Moses went up Mount Sinai to receive the Torah, which is the same amount of time between the 1st of Elul and Yom Kippur. The prayer's main theme is the 13 attributes of divine mercy. Scientists and students from around the world, including 15 Nobel Prize winners, are gathered at the Hebrew University Givat Ram campus for the World Science Conference Israel this week. Science Minister Dani Danon, who has just been named United Nations Ambassador, gave the opening address, while Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hosted the Nobel laureates, telling them that modernity will win out over the medievalism that is taking root in the region. Foreign Ministry Director General Dori Gold emphasized the role of science in bolstering peaceful relations, while other attendees stressed the important place that Israel holds in the world scientific community.
Science, in my judgment, will emerge as a key component for building peace in a changed Middle East.
Per capita population, the number of scientific papers published every year from Israel is very high, compares to the most advanced societies in the world. Okay? That's important. It means that there's a big scientific establishment and they're working hard and their papers are published in the best journals all over the world. Now, the fields they're working in vary tremendously. And so you can say that is a real contribution to knowledge that people are interested in.
So the research in Israel, or the science in Israel, in comparison to other countries, in a very good situation. We are in the highest echelons of recognition, as we just heard this morning. Being the 67 is only the beginning. We're supposed to be better, and it is dependent on one thing only: if the government invests more. So I do not have any doubt, and we do not have any doubt, whenever it comes to the future of the world of science. We can be in the highest echelons if we put it as a first priority, and if we invest much more in terms of science, bringing scientists and creating more frequent exchanges between Israeli scientists in the world. So the Hebrew University, as the leading university in Israel, is one of the prototypes of leading scientific work, and we expect to be even higher by such conferences as we have in the world.
As of this morning, driving in the central Dan region has become even a little more challenging. As part of the ongoing work surrounding the installation of the Tel Aviv light rail, dozens of cameras have now been added along lanes designated for public transportation only on the Ayalon highway between the section connecting the Cholot and Cholon junctions. The cameras will be directly linked to a central police situation room, which will monitor the footage and immediately issue fines to any private commuters who drive in those lanes. According to the new regulations, privately owned vehicles are prohibited from traveling on the designated areas between 6:30 to 10 in the morning so that they're clear for buses and taxicabs. Anyone who violates the new rules will have to pay 250 shekels, although just keep it in mind that the Ministry of Transportation has already announced plans to increase that amount to 750 within the next few months. Drive safely. And now to a story close to home. The Histadrut Labor Federation has declared a full-fledged labor dispute in the public sector in response to the possibility that the government will fire 1,500 employees of this network, the Israel Broadcast Authority, at the start of October. Histadrut Chairman Avi Nissenkorn says that he will fight what he referred to as the brutal and unilateral conduct against employees of the IBA, which is currently in liquidation and set to close down at the end of March of next year. Nissenkorn further stated that the action is a violation of basic rights and stressed that the declaration of a dispute applies to all workers in the public sector, including government offices, during the prospective nationwide general strike that could come within 14 days' time. It remains unknown at this time whether the Communications and the Justice Ministries will go ahead with plans to add a controversial clause to the amended public broadcasting law that's currently being debated in the Knesset that includes the dismissal of all 1,500 IBA personnel, with just 700 set to be rehired to carry out operations until the final dismantling of the network. As part of a proposal worked out between the Finance Ministry and the Labor Federation, employees are being offered the option of voluntary resignation ahead of the slated closure. But despite the Treasury's hopes that at least 300 employees would have agreed to voluntarily and willingly leave, so far only 50 have signed on to accept early retirement. A music festival in Spain has canceled the scheduled appearance by Jewish-American reggae artist Matis Yahu, leading the foreign ministry in Jerusalem to charge that the organizers caved into pressure from BDS activists, thus unmasking the anti-Semitic nature of that movement. Officials at the ministry say that because the artist is not Israeli, the cancellation serves as proof that the boycott campaign is not connected to either the Palestinian or the settlements issues, but is based purely on the hatred of Jews. Organizers of the Spanish festival claim to have dropped Matis Yahu from the August 22nd lineup because he was unwilling to clearly speak out against last summer's war with Gaza and the right of the Palestinian people to their own state. The singer responded that he has never been a political activist and that he does not involve his personal views in his lyrics or his performances. The stop in Spain is just one of the number of appearances scheduled on his current European tour, which also includes stops in Poland, Belgium, Germany, Ukraine, and the Czech Republic before his return for an additional whirlwind tour of the United States. Definitely their loss. And now on to my very favorite event of the year, and it's time to raise your goblet at the 12th Annual Jerusalem Wine Festival. The 4-day event opens tonight at the Israel Museum, where more than 40 vintners will be corking hundreds of the best wines that the country has to offer. And for the first time ever, wines from abroad will also be served up this year. The 85 shekel entrance fee covers the unlimited tasting of spectacular selections, and festival goers get to keep their wine glasses as mementos of the evening. The event is accessible to the mobility impaired and held outdoors in a sculpture garden as a variety of musical groups perform under the stars. There's also kosher dairy food available to nibble on, including cheese, of course, as well as sushi. Some 20,000 visitors are expected to toast one another at the Jerusalem Wine Festival at the Israel Museum this evening through Thursday night between 7 and 11 p.m. winners. And now taking a look at local finance, and the shekel lost strength in foreign currency trading today, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange put in a mixed performance. Here's a look at the numbers. Turning to the weather, and we'll get a little relief from the heat stress tomorrow with a slight drop in temperatures, although it will continue to be hotter than normal for this time of year. Here's the forecast at home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. We hope you'll join us again tomorrow when Laura Cornfield will be here to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a great evening and shalom from Jerusalem.